Welcome to Seeing This. I'm Mike Cornelis, and I have the privilege of being joined by writer-director Afia Nathaniel, whose short film, Don't Be Late, Myra, is a devastating look at harassment through the eyes of a 10-year-old girl on her way home from school. Afia, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the film. You and your film have been going through the festival circuit, and I'd love to know what it's been like for you to have your film screened in a theater full of people, and how has the response been with a film with such heavy themes?
Well, it's actually been really great. I've been traveling with the film, since it premiered at Woodstock last year. And it's gone to several countries, several cities, and it's, now sort of winding down. The festival scene is winding down. But it's always very special to experience any screening with a real audience, and every Q&A has been really memorable. The subject matter, of course, is it's a hard one. The film is hard but necessary, and so there's a lot of questions audiences have, and I feel there's such a great connection that audiences have made with the film, especially female audiences, and that's always very gratifying to see that.
Your film really takes a look at what it means to be courageous as a woman at any age. And as I mentioned, your film follows a 10-year-old girl on her way home after missing her bus and is harassed along the way by various men. Can you speak to what you were looking for in casting the role of Myra? And what was your approach to working with such a young person, considering the themes of the film?
She's wonderful, my lead actress, Anaya Omar. It's her first time acting in a
Wow.
film. Believe it or not, this is her
Wow.
first time. And I found her, 2 years ago when I started working on the film. It's a story, which would have required the actress to walk on the streets by herself on the road in the city of Lahore, where I'm from. And so it was very important for me to also cast from Lahore, the actual city where we were going to be filming. So I put I did a casting net that was pretty wide. And for several weeks, auditions kept pouring in, but I couldn't find the right girl. I was looking for somebody completely natural, with natural instincts and body language. um, and I was watching a lot of auditions from 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, because earlier the script had been written for a 15-year-old actress. And as part of the process, and when I widened the net to also include non-actors, I really was looking for a non-actor. But the auditions that kept getting sent to me were mostly from the commercial or in advertising industry, which is very big in Pakistan. Our film industry is tiny, but our commercial and advertising industry is quite thriving. So the auditions I was getting, it was about girls who were always smiling and kind of primed to behave in a certain way in front of the camera, and that is just not what I was looking for. So when I cast the net wider, and I went looking for a non-actor, and I lowered the age for casting, I found Anaya's audition as the last audition, and she really blew me away. In those 2 minutes, I could just tell this is a person who can carry the weight of the film on her shoulders. And that night, because the script was written for a 15-year-old, that night I went back to my computer, and I rewrote the role for a 10-year-old, a much younger child, and it completely changed the film, and it made it even stronger, at the end. So that's how, we found Anaya, and this is her first time acting, and she is amazing. She carries every scene on her shoulders.
She's incredible. She
Yeah,
has the appearance of being both delicate and strong to what you're
yeah,
speaking to. And it's
yeah.
fascinating. You also edit your own films, and to see you and
Yeah.
write, as I mentioned, and to see that you have to kind of pivot on the spot with the script.
Mhm.
Can you give an example of maybe one of the biggest differences that you made making it from a 15-year-old to, let's say, a 10-year-old?
So some of the dialogue changed, some of the, there's this idea of how do the men look at an even younger girl? Like,
Mm.
it just seemed even more dramatic. So what I did was, especially with actors, this is something that I like to do, is even with the adult actors who were coming in, I did a lot of improv with them. Improving scenes. Instead of giving them scripts to read out from, I give them improv scenarios. And so a lot of the things that arose from that improv, I started making that part of the script. So, the audition process is a way for me to go back and refine what's there on the page, but also start inhabiting it with the actual actors and their characters in a way that is more natural. So I let that be a dialogue in even in the writing phase all the way till I land on the set.
I,
So it's a really fun process for me.
and I think it transcends the film as far as making it feel raw and very lived in.
Yes,
And
yes.
a few years have passed between this movie and your debut film, Ducktar. What made now the time to tell this story? And did you always envision it as a short? Did you ever think about kind of expanding it into a feature? What was your thought process there?
I mean, this film has been a very hard one for me to make because I was only 9 when I was assaulted in the streets of Lahore, where I'm from. And as a child, I never had the language or the means to talk about it. And so I buried, this story along with many other stories of my friends who have gone through sexual assault. And it's only a few years ago when there were a series of very high profile sexual assault cases in Pakistan that I started thinking about, the lived experience of myself and my friends around me, and how our private and public spaces are not safe for girls. And so I was really angry. So the film, came from a place of anger and of wanting to break this silence, because very often the victims are blamed and shamed, and I was tired of that. I was like, I'm done with that, so this film was forged in the flame of anger. And so I literally wrote this film overnight, and it poured out of me, and I wanted to tell the story now because I mean, as you know, sexual assault is it's not only prevalent in one part of the country. It's across border, across geography, across culture, across language. And in present day, 1 in every 5 girls will be sexually assaulted before she turns 18. So for me, this reality is not acceptable. And so I've made this film to break the silence on this issue and to spur conversations on how we can, change the reality around this issue.
Well, I appreciate, your vulnerability of sharing your own story and transferring that onto page and then onto screen. Was that like a cathartic process as well, from before writing the script to writing the script to now having it featured? How has that been for you, kind of internalizing that process with the larger goal of, breaking that
Yeah.
trend?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because it's come a full circle, in some ways. And the whole process of sharing this film with real audiences in those festivals, I think that journey has been so cathartic and so meaningful, that what really began as a journey of anger really found a way for healing, and that is also important, and that is part of the reason why I talk about it so openly now, is because I don't want the shame to surround it anymore, and I've learned to process that and to sort of let go and to um, turn the chapter on it. The shame belongs to the perpetrator, not the victim, and that's a transference that needs to happen. And through the viewings of these films, what really gives me hope and healing is this idea that, after screenings, I've had many survivors come to me and tell me this was their story, or this is somebody's story that they know of and that they're close to or close with. And they wanted to, for them to see the story on the screen has helped them also to come to terms with something that may have been lying dormant for them for many years. So, this has been a journey for myself. And I hope this can remain a journey for many other survivors as well, and what they would like to take from it as well.
100%. You open your film with a bit of a brighter scene as far as balloons, and to my interpretation, it really represented innocence and maybe even escapism.
Hmm.
Was it always balloons? Why balloons? As far as opening your film, were there other ideas that you were thinking
Yeah.
about as far as representing that idea?
Yeah, it's a great question. The visuals were always there for me on paper, and the idea really was, as you're saying, it represented something innocent at the start of the film, and we see the same balloons at the end of the film again, but it's the loss of innocence at that point. And I wanted the colors to be really vivid, saturated, like a frame that's saturated with color. For me, the color heightens the idea of experiencing this reality that feels hyper real by the end of it, right? So what you think is a dreamlike, innocent feeling, it's actually a nightmare, somebody's nightmare, and there's no escaping that. The balloon can escape, but that is the only escape that visually is allowed. The spiritual escape is there, but on earth you're still very much trapped.
Indeed. We eventually meet Myra's mother, who is bedridden with an illness. How did you come up with that concept, which would eventually play into an assumed house dynamic within the
Yeah,
family?
yeah,
How did
yeah.
you come up with that?
So I wanted, I don't give many explanations as to the backstory, and I think that's where audiences have to work hard to come up with the backstory. So I won't say what that is, but I think the idea of building this 10-year-old child, Myra, who is responsible for many people in her house, including her mother, who is sick and needs care, and this 10-year-old is kind of forced to become an adult, almost like a mother, also in this family, right? And so I was playing with this idea of there is a mother, but she needs another mother, who is her child. And when Myra is late from home, we think that something's gonna go horribly wrong in this house. And that's how I was building it, and I never connect the spaces between Myra and her mother and anyone else in the house. To me, they're all like, prisoners of their own reality. And so, and their own spaces that they inhabit, I never connect them unless it's by sound. And for me, that was the way to bridge
Mm.
the mother and daughter's presence on the screen. It's through sound they come together.
It's
Yeah.
such a shame that so many people, children, have to experience growing up and kind of take on that adult role within their family dynamics. And I think you capture that a lot, as you mentioned, through sound and also the imagery in the film that I thought was incredibly beautiful. The shots that you captured specifically, without giving too much away, the last couple shots that you do in playing with shadows and again, the contrast of darkness and color. What was that collaboration process like with your DP Mo Azmi to
Hmm.
capture the tone of the film?
I mean, we had many conversations. Mo is a lovely spirit and a hugely talented DP in Pakistan. And I've been wanting to work with him for a long time. And I was so excited when he said, yes, I'll fly to Lahore and do this with you. And so this is our first time working together, but he also knows my sensibility from my previous work. And he understands, for instance, how I like to use silence. For me, silence is always louder than words, right? And so, how do we frame this journey of a character who has so much to say and is yet silent for most of the part? How do we create this idea of this volcano, this buried volcano inside this character? How do we show it? And so for me, it was always important. For me, the city, the location is always important to find the spiritual undergirding, so to speak, for the character. You know, what does this location mean in this time and place with respect to the character's spiritual journey? So that's how I like to explore the location. And in this film, particular film, the city is a living organism. You know, there's traffic, there's movement around Myra. She's a silent figure walking alone, silently by herself for many, many moments in the film. But this thing is us, you know, us around her. It's a living organism, and here's this quiet, lonely figure. So this juxtaposition of, you know, something kinetic with stasis. There's
Mhm.
this tension in the frame, and so I really wanted to explore that, and Mo understood how I wanted to explore that, and make that part of how we frame her with respect to a location or in a location, or how the light you know, falls on her, and the saturation. Again, I love color, and he really had to like spin his head on the kind of colors I wanted, because he's used to working with directors who do desaturated a lot. So, you know, for him, he wanted to like, you know, really, really honor that saturated frame. I'm so glad we worked together for this, to, you know, and gave you the frames that you will remember and will haunt you.
Absolutely. It's the best way I can describe it is devastatingly beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a heavy theme, but I think the way that it's filmed is incredibly creative and again cements these images in your mind for quite some time. You've been very gracious with your time. Just one last question for you. Something I like to ask everyone that I get to talk
Uh-huh.
to. What is a underseen film that maybe you'd like to recommend to people to check out?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky question, Mike.
It can be anything, whether
Oh,
related to your film, a good
but
double
a good
feature.
question. It's a good question. I'm gonna go to my Bollywood roots, because that's where you know, that's been my first instinct. And there is this beautiful film called Umrao Jan, and it's the name of the character, the original Umrao Jan. There's two Umrao Jans, but the original classic 1981 version
Mm.
is with Rekha, and it's the story of this courtesan uh, who doesn't find love in her life. And it's one of the most beautiful, subtle, uh, gorgeously musical film ever. And I don't know if you know about this, but if you don't, Mike, that's a film I would like you to watch at some point. And yes, it's tragedy, because I love tragedy and I'm the queen of tragedy. And it's just a beautiful film you will not forget.
I'll definitely check it out. I like to pose this question as for our viewers to see films that they haven't seen, but
Yeah.
really it's selfish. It's for me movies that
Yeah.
maybe
Now
I've
you
missed.
have to watch it.
100%, and I can completely relate to like tragedy and darker,
Uh-huh.
heavier films for whatever reason they speak to me. Uh, Afia, you've been a pleasure to speak with. The film
Oh,
is
thank
Don't
you.
Be Late, Myra. Please, if you have an opportunity to check it out, do so. It'll definitely sit with you for quite some time. Afia, Nathaniel, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.